What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Mellow Mondays podcast. Recording a double episode today. This will be coming out the week after I record the other one, but that's why I'm wearing the same clothes. I'm not going to do any magic tricks and change my shirt or hat or whatever. It doesn't matter. But kind of as I was saying last week, I had a couple stories of kind of my time fly fishing with my grandpa. And I just wanted to kind of make that its own little episode, just to kind of break it up. But yeah, it's been it was a good trip. I went and picked up my grandpa in Grand Junction. I went and shot a little bit before I picked him up. There's a little range out there, so I was hanging out there. Went by a couple stores, got a new hoodie and stuff, and then picked my grandpa up, and we came back into town here in Silt, and we kind of hung out. And the next day, we went and fished the Frying Pan River for the first time. And it was just, it was a great day. I mean, the weather was perfect, like cold at night, but it was just really nice sunny days. Wasn't too cold, not too much wind. Like it was just like the perfect fall day. Got into some holes that I wanted to fish and, got into, some good fishing. I don't really fished for a couple hours, maybe 3, maybe 4 hours, but I think my grandpa probably caught, I don't know, 7 or 8 fish the first day, landed 7 or 8 fish. I caught a few. I don't think I caught as many. He says he did, but I don't think that's true. But I missed a ton of fish. I was fishing this like 7'6", 4-weight, really subtle action rod. That was actually one of our old fishing. Norm, one of my grandpa's friends. He passed away, unfortunately, and they gave the rod to me. So it's always a special rod. It's just good to fish it. Feels good. Always think of Norm when we're fishing it. So. Thank you, Norm, for the fish I caught on it, and but missed a bunch of fish. I'm rusty, I haven't been fishing a whole lot, so it was good to get out, fish some dry flies. We were fishing some blue wing dries, and doing some nymphing and stuff too, just kind of your normal stuff out here. But it was cool just to show my grandpa the river. I call and talk about my trips and how my day's going and stuff. Like I call him, I don't know, maybe once a week or so. And it's always good just to kind of show somebody something that you've talked about. Like the drive up there right now is phenomenal. All the leaves are changing. There's this lady that puts pumpkins out on the side of the road, like on different spots. So it just like feels like Halloween and fall, and I don't know. It's a special experience. It's a really amazing river. And so we were going to fish the pan again the next day, which we did. We fished. Fishing wasn't as good, unfortunately. I think we only caught a couple, and then we were gonna move to a new spot. So I'm like, okay, let's move. So I helped my grandpa kind of get up the hill, and I threw my rods on top of my truck, which I never do. And as I was doing it, I thought to myself, you shouldn't do this because you're liable to forget your rods on top of the truck. But I was like, oh no, I'll remember, whatever. So I threw my rods up there. And I forgot about them. So I opened up the truck, get everything else put in. I like ran over, helped my grandpa up the hill, whatever. Not a big deal. And we were like, okay, let's go try another spot. We were both pretty tired, I mean, grandpa had been traveling a lot. Just doesn't have a lot of stamina. So we're not fishing full days, 3-4 hours max. We got to drive an hour each way to get there. So whatever. So we drive up to the next spot and I look around. There's nobody in this hole that I want to fish. It'd be really easy for my grandpa to get in. I was like, okay, sick. This is perfect. So we drove around the other side of the river. It took a little bit. I dropped my grandpa off, and I'm going to go park and grab everything and meet him. So I get parked, get my pack and my net and everything ready to go, and I pop open my rod vault. I've got a four rod holder tube on top of my truck. I open it up, and there's no rods. Well, there's one rod, but it's the rod that we weren't fishing that day. So I had 3 rods that we fished earlier. And nothing's there. And I immediately like have that sinking feeling of like, oh my gosh, I left the rods on top of my truck. Like I know I did. Like it's just that instant, like what just happened? So I get back in the truck. I run and grab my grandpa. I'm like, hey, I'm pretty sure I left the rods on top of the truck. So we're like, all right, we got to go look for them. So we had been 2 miles upriver from where we had previously fished. So we drove back down. I don't see him on the way down. I jump into the hole. There was another guy working in there where we were. I was like, hey, when I pulled out, did you see any rods fly off my truck? He's like, no. He's like, you left them on? I'm like, yeah. Like, it's just that, like, oh my gosh, it's the walk of shame. Like, I cannot believe I did that. Like, it's I don't know, it's just such a rookie mistake or a dumb mistake. And so, whatever, we drive up the river. I walk the banks and the corners where they maybe flew off, and there's no sign of them. And I just we got to give up. There's nothing we can do. So I go into the shop and talk to our manager and just like, hey, if obviously if anybody brings any rods in, let me know. And I was just like trying to keep my emotions in check, because on one hand, like, I wasn't really that bummed. It was like, okay, like, I had that feeling like, somehow I'm gonna get the rods back. Like, somebody had to have seen them. Like, there's no way they flew off into the river. Like, they had to have gotten hit by a car or something. Which, if they got hit by a car, is perfect, because at least I have the rods. Because I can't file a warranty claim with no rod. But if I have a broken rod, I can just send it in and pay way less money for it. It's not a big deal. So I'm kind of bumming like that, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, there's this vlogger that I follow, this guy named Casey Willax. He's a surfer, snowboarder. He does all these different things, and the big thing he's been talking about lately is kind of this positive attitude. Like, his whole statement is like, good. Like, okay, it's like, all right, something bad happens. Like, good. What can I find out of this that is a good thing, or going to lead to something positive, whatever. So I'm trying to have that perspective, and it's not a huge deal that night. My family had just gotten into town that day, and it's like you got to tell everybody. I texted all our guides like, "Hey, if you see any rods," like, everybody was super supportive, and like we've all done it. That's pretty bad, losing 3 rods at one time. That's not the best, but so I was kind of bummed because we couldn't fish more. That was like my last day to fish with my grandpa. And I was kind of bumming that we couldn't keep fishing and stuff, but I know he was tired, so I don't know. I think it was okay, but it's like, dang, like, I wish we could have fished that hole, because there was some nice fish in there, and whatever. It is what it is. That's life, but you got to kind of manage that disappointment or whatever. And the next day, I'm going fishing with my parents. Luckily, our manager was kind enough to let us use one of her rods, and I had a couple of the rods, which 6 weights for the boat, which is fine. It's a little overkill for the pan, but still works. And as I'm driving in, I see a text like, "Guess what?" I'm like, they have to be found. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. So somebody found the rods. It was actually somebody going out with one of our guides that day. And they were gonna bring him in the next day, because they literally were just about going out for the trip. I'm like, okay, sick, that's perfect. So I actually caught him before they went up to fish. And I was like, okay, like, can you bring him in tomorrow? Whatever, I'll buy you some beers. You got to put the good vibes back out. Like, you got to. So they were super cool. I bought him 2 6-packs and left it at the shop for him. They dropped the rods off, and I haven't had a chance to look at them. I'll see them tomorrow. But apparently it's just the tips, which is amazing. So I think I broke 3 tips and maybe one of my reels, but I was fishing cheap reels, so I'm not really that worried about the reel. Um, but yeah, like, 3 tips is $150, not a big deal. Instead of having to pay, like, if I lost everything, like, I don't know, between $600 and $800, maybe 900, depending on the pro deal and stuff, with the line, the reel, and the rod itself. So it was a huge blessing to be able to find the rods. Like, so thank you. I can't remember the dude's name, but they picked him up. Like, oh my gosh, such a relief. It just got me thinking about, how, like, we handle tough situations or bad situations. Like, the reason it bothered me wasn't because I, like, lost all my rods. It was just like, it's such a waste of money. Like, my grandparents were like, oh, we'll pay for it. I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like, it was a mistake, and we all make mistakes, and mistakes happen, and that one could have been way worse than it was, and I'm thankful it wasn't. But I don't know, it just made me think about kind of how we handle adversity and um handle bad things, and I'm not always the best at that, of not getting bummed out or sad or whatever. But just, I don't know, maybe check out Casey Willax if you guys want, like, some motivation or whatever. He's a cool dude. A lot of surf and snowboard videos and stuff. But I don't know, just kind of that perspective of, okay, this bad thing happened. It's clearly my fault. There's nothing we do about it, Just hope that somebody finds them, and they did, and it ended up being way better than it could have been. But it was just a good reminder of trying to handle, a bad situation well. Because no point in getting pissed or whatever and yelling and being all down. I could have let it ruin my next couple days, but I really don't think I did. Like, it was just like, yeah, kind of a bummer, but I still was able to go home and have a good time with my family. I woke up the next morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I was kind of bumming. We were driving out there, and I just had that feeling. I'm like, somebody's going to turn them in. Like, the way they were sitting, like, somebody had to have hit them, and then, like, they're going to drop them in. So they did, which is all good. So thank you again for, if not that you're going to ever hear this, but thanks for picking those rods up. I appreciate it. Doing the right thing. And yeah, just a word of, I don't know, not advice, but encouragement to you all. Like, bad things are going to happen in our life, and how we deal with them oftentimes is a bigger deal than what actually happens. And that was a good reminder to me when I'm like, oh my gosh, I just threw away $800. Like, there it goes. It was just, I'm not always good at that. So it was a good little, like, okay, I'm making progress and we're getting better at like handling like, oh dang, that sucks. Okay, it's all good. We'll figure it out. So I don't know. That's all I had. I just wanted to go a little more in depth with like that story because it's kind of crazy. A little more in depth about just kind of my time fishing with my grandpa. I know you guys. I have an episode not on my YouTube but on Spotify, I believe, or at least Anchor. If you go in, I have an interview I did with my grandpa years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. It's a really cool listen. Like, so if you have time, go check that one out because that one's really special. Just, I don't know, grandpa's the one who got me into fly fishing, so to bring him out again as a guide and to, kind of watch him fish and catch some fish, and he was sitting down in the chair. I've got a video of him catching fish. I'll post it on my socials and stuff, but it's just, I don't know, it's just cool, special moments. Moments I will always cherish. So happy about that. And yeah, just hanging out, getting stuff done. We're winding down, so I should be pretty consistent with my podcast uploads. But as usual, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate all the support, the likes, the comments, subscribing. It means a lot. So thank you guys for doing that. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next Monday. This has been another episode of the Mellow Mondays podcast. Peace.